I found out my wife was leading a double life after I saw her payment statement. I thought my marriage was solid until a glance at my wife's payment statement revealed a strange pattern. Expenses on baby items, pediatricians, and kindergarten, none of which made sense since we didn't have kids. Confused and concerned, I followed her, only to uncover she was leading a double life. At 33, I was a successful lawyer with a specialty in infidelity cases. My work was all about betrayal, uncovering lies, exposing hidden lives, and making sure the betrayed partner walked away with the best possible outcome. I was good at it. Too good, maybe. Over the years, I had developed a keen eye for spotting inconsistencies, reading between the lines, and finding evidence where others saw none. Ironically, all of that knowledge, all of that sharp instinct, would one day come crashing into my personal life in a way I never imagined. It was early evening when I drove home through the city, watching the sun dip below the skyline. The streets were buzzing with the usual rhythm of life, people heading home, honking horns, lights flickering on in office windows. I was newly married to Natalie, a woman I loved deeply. She was kind, intelligent, and incredibly grounded. Our wedding was only months behind us, and I still felt the glow of it. Marriage, to me, meant trust above all. And because of my line of work, I understood just how fragile that trust could be. I valued it, I protected it, I believed in it, until I had a reason not to. As I turned into our quiet neighborhood and pulled into the driveway, something felt off. Natalie's car wasn't there. A small thing, but it made me pause. She was usually home before me. Punctuality was one of her defining traits, part of what had drawn me to her. Lately, though, that pattern had changed. She'd been coming home later than usual, always with an excuse, always with a sigh about how busy things were at work. I stepped inside the house. It was still and quiet, too quiet. The silence pressed in on me as I set down my briefcase and looked around. Nothing seemed out of place, but unease crept in anyway. Maybe it was because I'd seen so many similar stories play out in my office. I had heard every excuse, every denial, and every justification under the sun. The suspicious husband or wife always wondered, always asked the same question in the end. That night, I found myself asking it too. Could Natalie be cheating on me? It felt wrong even thinking it. Natalie, of all people? But doubt has a way of feeding itself once it starts. Several hours later, Natalie walked through the door. She looked tired, her shoulders sagging under the weight of the day. She kicked off her shoes, dropped her bag by the door, and gave me a tired smile. I wanted to believe everything was fine, but the question had taken root, and I couldn't stop myself. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "You've been coming home late a lot." Natalie looked surprised, maybe even hurt. "I've just been busy grading papers," she said softly. "There's been a lot to do lately." That made sense. She was a devoted school teacher. Her job often demanded long hours, especially during exam time. I nodded, tried to let it go. She sat down at the table, and we started dinner together, talking about our days like we usually did. For a moment, things felt normal again. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up quickly, her face flickering with something I couldn't quite read. She glanced at the screen, then pressed a button to delete the message without responding, but not before I saw it. "Honey, will you be there tomorrow?" The words echoed in my mind. The tone was too familiar, too intimate, not something you'd expect from a colleague or a parent. I froze. "What was that?" I asked, my voice now sharper, colder. Natalie looked up, eyes wide. "What do you mean?" "The message. I saw what it said." She sighed, placing the phone down, then rubbed her forehead like she was trying to ease a headache. "It's not what you think," she said. "It was probably a wrong number." She even showed me the message thread, trying to dismiss it, but doubt had already wrapped itself around me like a vice. The moment passed, but my mind didn't. I barely touched my food. I barely heard anything else she said. Something didn't sit right. That night in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my mind refusing to rest. Natalie was beside me, breathing gently in sleep, unaware that my thoughts were spinning out of control. The message had cracked something open. I needed answers. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. Slowly, carefully, I picked up her phone. I used her fingerprint while she slept, unlocking the device with a knot in my stomach. I scrolled through her contacts and paused when I saw a name I didn't recognize. Rabbit. Curious and cautious, I opened the messages. What I found shook me. Conversations with an unknown number. Mentions of meeting up. Warm, casual language. The kinds of messages that matched the very same patterns I had seen in my work. messages written in between lines, full of implications. Then I took it a step further. I logged into her online bank account, another habit from my legal background. What people say and what they spend money on rarely line up when they're hiding something. Sure enough, there were transactions that didn't add up. Toy stores, small hospital charges, payments to names I didn't recognize. My mind raced. Was there a child? One she never told me about? Was that who Rabbit was? I scrambled to lock her phone and return it to her nightstand, just as she stirred. I lay back down, closed my eyes, and pretended to sleep, but inside, I was falling apart. The idea that Natalie could be leading a double life tore at me. The betrayal wasn't just about infidelity, it was about secrets, about lies buried so deep they'd gone unnoticed until now. My heart pounded with disbelief, fear, and pain. The next morning, I rose before she did. I didn't speak much. My decision was already made. I was going to follow her. I had to know where she was really going. Not as a lawyer this time, but as a husband desperate for the truth. I drove to Natalie's school and parked my car down the street where I wouldn't be seen. I waited with the engine off, heart pounding as I stared at the entrance. After some time, Natalie appeared, walking quickly to her car. She didn't see me. I watched her pull out of the lot, then quietly followed at a distance, staying 2 cars behind. With every turn she took, I could feel my breath catch in my throat. Finally, she stopped in front of a rundown house in a modest neighborhood. The paint was chipped, the yard unkempt, and the fence sagged slightly to one side. It wasn't a place I recognized. I parked farther down and waited, watching from a spot where I couldn't be easily seen. After a few minutes passed, I stepped out of my car and crept closer, circling toward a side window to get a better view. Inside, I saw Natalie sitting in a cozy-looking living room with a man. The atmosphere between them was strangely warm. They weren't touching, not obviously, but there was something in the way they leaned toward each other, the way they smiled as they talked. It wasn't the look of strangers or even casual friends. Then, without warning, Natalie leaned forward and kissed the man gently on the cheek. My chest tightened. My jaw dropped. I backed away from the window and moved toward a group of bushes near the fence, hoping to hide better and keep watching. I crouched low, trying to calm my rapid breathing. That's when I saw the front door open. Natalie stepped outside, pushing a wheelchair. Sitting in it was a young girl, no more than 6 or 7. Natalie smiled warmly at her, and the girl beamed back. The sight froze me. They looked happy, comfortable, like they shared something that wasn't new. Who was this child? I didn't know of any relatives with kids, and Natalie had never mentioned a niece or cousin. The girl's face lit up as Natalie adjusted the blanket on her lap. The wheelchair rolled down the ramp slowly, Natalie moving gently and attentively. I was so caught up in watching them that I didn't notice the dog until it was too late. A loud bark shattered the quiet, making me jump in place. I turned to see a medium-sized dog bounding toward me, barking like mad. I tried to hush it, waving my hands gently, but it was too late. The commotion had caught Natalie's attention. She looked around the yard, eyes wide with alarm. "Who's there?" she shouted. "I'm calling the police!" She hadn't recognized me in the chaos, and I wasn't about to wait around to be exposed. The dog lunged toward me, nipping at my legs as I stumbled backward. I turned and sprinted toward the fence, pain shooting through me as the dog's teeth grazed my ankle. I scrambled over the wood, tearing my pants on a sharp edge, and landed hard on the other side. Back in my car, my breathing was ragged. My heart thudded in my chest. I didn't know what I'd just seen, but it haunted me the entire drive home. Natalie with a little girl in a wheelchair. A man who welcomed her with a cheek kiss. A house I had never seen. My thoughts raced with questions and scenarios. Had she started a secret family? Was the girl hers? Whose child was that? When I got home, I changed out of my torn clothes and sat on the edge of the bed, waiting. I couldn't sit still. Every minute felt longer than the last. Finally, I heard the familiar sound of Natalie's car pulling into the driveway. My stomach turned. She walked in, setting down her things like it was any normal day. "Sorry, I'm late. Work ran long," she called out casually. But I didn't respond in kind. I walked straight into the living room, standing stiffly as she looked at me. "Natalie, stop," I said firmly. "I know everything." She stared at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "I know you're cheating on me," I said, blunt and to the point. The color drained from her face. "What? I'm not cheating, Hank. What are you talking about?" I didn't hold back. I brought up the messages. The secret contact named Rabbit. The affectionate text. The purchases. The time away. the lies. Her expression shifted from shock to something sharper. "You went into my phone?" "Yes," I snapped. "Yes, I did. I'm the bad guy now, right? I went into your phone while you are out spending money on some other family?" "Other family?" she repeated, stunned. "What are you even saying?" "I saw everything, Natalie. I followed you. I saw you with that man. I saw the little girl." She stepped back like I had hit her. "You followed me?" "Yes," I said, eyes locked on hers. I wasn't ashamed of it anymore. I had to. She stood in silence, blinking, then turned sharply and stomped toward the bedroom. I waited a few seconds, then followed, only to find her angrily packing clothes into a bag. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I don't know. A hotel. Anywhere but here," she snapped, stuffing shirts into the suitcase. "Fine," I muttered, and turned to leave. That's when I saw her phone lying on the bed. Without a second thought, I grabbed it and walked back into the living room. Quickly, I installed a tracking app. I needed to know where she went. If there was more to this, I had to be ready. When I returned to the bedroom, I placed the phone back where she had left it, but I paused, looking at her. Her eyes were red, her face drawn with emotion. Anger, yes, but also something else. Hurt. I didn't want to be angry anymore. "Let's talk," I said gently. "We can work through this. You don't have to leave." She zipped the bag with a loud rasp. "Yes, I do." She stood up, grabbed the suitcase handle, and looked at me squarely. "And for your information," she said slowly, "the man and child you saw today, they're my brother and niece." My eyebrows rose sharply at her words. Her brother and niece? Why had I never heard of them before? Never seen a single photo, not a name mentioned at a family dinner, not even a passing reference? The words slipped out of my mouth before I could stop them. Why have I never met them before? But Natalie didn't answer. She brushed past me, cold and silent, her suitcase rolling behind her. She wouldn't even look at me. The front door slammed shut so hard behind her that the sound echoed through the house like a crack of thunder. I stood frozen in the hallway, stunned and breathless. The silence around me rang in my ears. Everything felt surreal. Then, in a wave of fury, I lashed out. I stormed into the living room and swept everything off the mantel, framed photos, candles, souvenirs from trips we took together. They all shattered to the floor. I screamed until my throat burned. Years of control, logic, and carefully handled court cases all crumbled in that moment. Breathing heavily, I stumbled back to the bedroom. Rage had started to fade, and in its place was a growing, gnawing need to understand. Something wasn't right. Natalie had kept too many secrets, and if she really wasn't cheating, then what was she hiding? I tore through the closet, searching through boxes, drawers, behind suitcases. My hands shook. Then something caught my attention. A false panel in the back of her wardrobe. My breath hitched as I pulled it loose. Inside was a small, hidden compartment. My stomach twisted as I reached inside and pulled out a worn duffel bag. Inside it, I found a handgun. My fingers hesitated as I lifted it. Beneath the weapon were several fake passports, all with different names and faces, but everyone unmistakably Natalie. I found a large stack of cash bound with rubber bands, and then at the very bottom a folded newspaper clipping. I unfolded it carefully. The headline made my blood run cold. Local bank robbery leaves police baffled, suspects still at large. I stood there, speechless, staring down at the photo of the bank in the article. I recognized the date. It was just over 2 years ago, before I met Natalie. My hands trembled. "What?" I breathed out. "Who did I marry?" I was in a daze. My mind tried to connect the dots, but nothing made sense yet. I threw the items into the bag and rushed out to my car. I had to find Natalie. She had to explain all of this. Now, I drove straight to the nearest hotel, the same one I suspected she would go to. Luck, desperation, or something in between led me to the right place. I slipped the receptionist some cash and got the room number. My heart pounded as I approached the door. I knocked and disguised my voice as room service. Natalie opened it, arms crossed, visibly tired and guarded. "What else do you want to talk about, Hank?" she said. "I already told you. I'm not cheating on you." "I believe you," I interrupted before she could say more. "I believe you didn't cheat on me." Then I held up the duffel bag. Her eyes shifted from defiance to defeat. She let me in and closed the door behind us. Then, in a low voice, she began to speak. She admitted it all. The fake IDs, the hidden money, the robbery. Years ago, she had been involved with some dangerous people. Her niece, Katie, nicknamed Rabbit, had needed emergency surgery. The cost was impossible. Her brother Tom had no way to pay. Natalie did the unthinkable. She helped plan and carry out a robbery. "It all happened before she ever met me," she said. I sat there in silence, rubbing my chin, trying to take it all in. "You robbed a bank?" I whispered. "Yes," she said, barely audible. "There was no other way. Katie was dying. I had to do something." I let out a long breath. My instincts as a lawyer kicked in. "We have to go to the police, Natalie," I said. "But my friend Luke, he's the best criminal defense attorney in the state. He can help you get a good deal. You can't keep living like this, waiting for everything to fall apart." She stared at me with wide eyes, fear hiding behind them. I took her hand gently. She was trembling. I could see it all now. The years of anxiety, of hiding. A lifetime spent looking over her shoulder. Finally, she nodded. We drove home together in silence. She made tea when we got back. We sat at the kitchen table, both exhausted in different ways. I began talking through a plan, how we'd contact Luke, what her options might be. She nodded, slowly as she listened. Then, my eyelids began to droop. I tried to fight it, but my body was suddenly heavy. My vision blurred. Natalie's voice grew faint as she guided me to bed. That was the last thing I remembered. When I woke up, the light outside had changed. My head felt foggy, like I'd been drugged. I blinked rapidly, trying to focus. Something was wrong. My sheets felt damp. There was a reddish stain soaking through the fabric. I sat up, alarmed, and turned. A knife lay on the bed beside me, its blade smeared with blood. Panic flooded my chest. I looked around the room. "Natalie!" I screamed, stumbling out of bed. I swayed on my feet, disoriented and terrified. A trail of blood led from the bed and out the door. I followed it, gasping at what I saw. The house was a disaster. Furniture had been overturned. Photos were smashed. Books scattered across the floor. It was chaos. Far worse than anything I had done the night before in anger. I kept calling for Natalie, my voice cracking. I reached down to wipe some of the blood with my hand, but it only smeared across my skin. Then something caught my eye. Movement outside. I ran to the window and peered through the blinds, breath caught in my throat. As I peered through the blinds, heart racing and mind spinning, I saw two police officers talking to my neighbor. They looked concerned. My neighbor pointed directly at my house while speaking animatedly. I could hear snippets through the window, something about screaming, crashing sounds. That's when I realized he had heard everything from last night, and now the police were here. My eyes flicked to my car parked out front. It was muddy, scratched, as if it had been driven over rough terrain, but I had no memory of leaving the house. None. I hadn't taken the car anywhere. Or had I? Panic started to grow in my chest, thick and suffocating. Then came the knock, firm, authoritative. I backed away from the window like a guilty man, then ran to the bedroom. My thoughts raced. If they came in and saw the blood, the overturned furniture, the knife, how would it look? What would they think? They would think I killed her. I threw on clothes, grabbed Natalie's pistol from where I'd hidden it in the bag earlier, and without giving myself more time to think, I pushed open the bedroom window and climbed out. My feet hit the ground roughly just as one of the officers spotted me and shouted. They ran after me, but I knew the neighborhood. I darted through alleyways, behind fences, slipping through shortcuts and over low brick walls. My lungs burned. As I ran, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to find Natalie. I had to understand why she had done this, why she faked her own death and set me up to look like her killer. But I couldn't do that if I got caught. She'd made sure the scene at the house looked as damning as possible, and she had done it well. Eventually, I lost the officers in the maze of streets. I ducked behind a stack of trash bins in someone's backyard and waited, holding my breath. I heard footsteps fading, then silence. I stayed still for what felt like forever before finally emerging. My limbs shaky and my clothes soaked in sweat. I checked the tracking app I had installed on her phone. My fingers trembled as I followed the blinking dot on the screen, holding my breath with every turn. But when I finally reached the destination, it wasn't her. It was an empty road on the edge of town, lined with tall grass and overgrown bushes. The tracking dot was still, and then I saw why. Lying there, half hidden in the weeds, was Natalie's phone, abandoned. She had ditched it on purpose, a decoy, a final insult. I stood there a moment, breathing hard, heart pounding with betrayal and frustration. She had planned this, all of it. But if she had gone to such lengths, there was one place she might return to, one link I hadn't fully explored. Tom, her brother. I flagged down a cab and gave the driver the address I remembered from public records I had seen before. It took a while, and the entire ride I sat on edge, gripping the bag tightly, running scenarios in my head. When we finally pulled up outside Tom's modest house, I got out and walked to the door with purpose. I knocked, then knocked again. Harder. When he answered, I didn't give him a chance to speak. I reached into the bag, pulled out Natalie's gun, and aimed it straight at his face. His eyes widened in horror, and he raised his hands slowly. "Please," he muttered, backing up. I stepped inside, pushing the door shut behind me with my foot. "Sit," I told him, motioning toward the couch. He obeyed, his face pale. Katie was in the room too, sitting quietly on the far end of the couch, watching with wide eyes. I felt a twist of guilt in my stomach seeing the little girl so frightened, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't about her. This was about getting answers. "Call Natalie," I ordered Tom. "Now!" His fingers shook as he dialed, then handed me the phone. When she answered, her voice was cautious. "Tom," I didn't waste a second. "Hi, Natalie," I said coldly. "You sound very much alive for someone who's supposed to be dead." "Contrary to your plan, I haven't been arrested. But Tom here, he's not doing so great. I have a gun pointed at him. And Katie's here too. If you don't show up in the next 6 hours, I swear to God I'll kill them both." There was a sharp gasp on the other end. "You wouldn't do that," I scoffed. "Want to test me? Hank, please," she begged. "You have 6 hours, I said, then hung up. The room went quiet. Tom stared at me, scared but silent. Katie sat stiffly, not crying, just watching. I kept the gun close, not aimed, but always ready. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew I was crossing a line, but I didn't care. Not anymore. Natalie had broken every promise, every truth we built our lives on. She left me to take the fall for her. I needed to see her face when the truth came out. Time passed slowly. My nerves were frayed, but I kept my eyes on the door. And then, hours later, it burst open. Natalie stood there, out of breath, her hair disheveled, her eyes full of panic. She froze when she saw the gun, the fear on Tom and Katie's faces, and the look in mine. "Hank," she said softly, "please, let them go." I stood up sharply. "Why, Natalie? Why did you do this? Why fake your death? Why leave me to rot?" She hesitated, then said, "Because I didn't want to go to prison. You were going to turn me in. I couldn't take that risk." "I loved you," I shouted. "We could have faced everything together." "But in prison," she whispered, "I would have been alone." My lips trembled. My mind screamed for a way out, for something, anything, that could undo what we'd both done. And then, just as suddenly, red and blue lights filled the windows. Officers stormed in, yelling for me to drop the weapon. I froze. The gun clattered to the floor as I raised my hands. They rushed in and pinned me down, cuffing me roughly. I didn't resist. I just kept my eyes on Natalie. She stood there, tears sliding down her cheeks. The officers turned to her. "You're under arrest as well," one of them said. Natalie didn't fight. She nodded, quietly admitting the truth. She confessed to faking her death, to setting me up. They read her rights, and we were both taken outside in separate cars. As I sat in the back of the patrol vehicle, the gravity of everything sank in. I turned to one of the officers beside me. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," I said. "I just needed her to come. I needed the truth." The officer looked at me, calm but firm. "No goal justifies threatening people at gunpoint. You should have called us. Explained everything. We could have helped." I leaned back in the seat, eyes burning. He was right. I had crossed too many lines, acted on fear and emotion, and now there would be consequences for both of us. But maybe it wasn't the end. Maybe, with the right help, I could start putting things back together.